All right. Well, Gary Howard would have been here, but apparently Gary Howard was too expensive, so we're here. I think the second option was a Gary Howard hologram that we were going to project it, but the technology department didn't like that. So Gary Howard on video, everybody. Let's give it up one more time. Gary Howard on video. My name is Wade Antonio Caldwell. I come from a state that some of you might have heard of called Arizona. Anybody ever heard of this place? Place you don't want to be right now. That's for sure. So thank you for bringing me at this time of year. But I also know we're coming back at some other times of year that I'm also looking forward to, because we don't get much of that white stuff in Arizona. I'm looking forward to a little bit of that. But very happy to be part of a history, generational commitment to this work. We're very aware that in as much as I think we were kicking off the day with, I don't know, was anyone hearing the Eminem song? Like, this is the moment? Well, this is the moment, but also I think there's been so many moments that have generated the energy for this to happen. We're speaking with some of the students today, talking about a real long-term conversation and commitment around this. And we're so honored and humbled to be a part of it. And I also just wanted to mention, like, hearing that first statement opening today in both Spanish and English, I appreciate that so deeply. Yo soy mexicano, yo. Mi mamá es de Chicago, México. Y tengo mucho orgullo en esta. Y el español es un puente. Es un puente, no es un problema, es un puente. The Spanish is truly a bridge, it's not a problem. It's something that we need to think about, how languages can help us connect one another, how we can connect nations. It's about building diplomacy around, being able to understand each other. So thank you. And then Corwin, I got all kinds of ideas from what you said. I think we do need to Corwin before we Maslow and Bloom. We do. I did. So thank you. And Tia, the only thing missing from your speech was, and I just want to announce, President 2020. I'm going for the presidency. That was the only thing missing, because you had all the good applause going. You could have kicked it off right here. But anyhow, thank you for inviting us. We're very happy to be here. This is my brother Benji that I get the privilege to travel around the country with. So, everybody, this is Benji Howard, Gary's son, actually.
Yeah, I didn't know I was gonna get invited to fly all the way out here and sit on a bleacher and watch my dad say some stuff. But as I was watching, I was like, God, this guy's kind of smart. It's good we're doing that.
Skips a generation. Not just kidding.
But Wade, it's good to be here with you two. I can't believe we're still getting along after all these years.
So true.
It's a real honor, so thank you for the invitation, to be here and be a part of this journey. I gotta say, I hope all of you know that there is kind of this relationship with this thing called deep equity and this thing called youth equity stewardship. I just have to say right off the bat that we hope, the deepest hopefulness we're bringing to this is that we're not coming in as some process or a thing you kind of have to do. We really feel like we want to be part of your community and support the wisdom that we know and the work that's already going on. This stuff isn't starting today, or back in June, right? This work has been a long journey, and we're just invited in to be partners in that. One of the basic assumptions that we have in this work is that the wisdom is in the community. And the other one is that we got this. I know it's tough, because when we look at the data, we can say, in fact, we've been doing 10 years of work, and we're still seeing the same patterns in our data, but we got this. Look around the country, people are doing it. Like, we know how to do this. We know how to solve the problems that we have in our community, and we have the wisdom in the community to do it. So, I hope we want to come in as humble as we can. And we're actually going to, we're going to kick off with a little music. Is that okay with you? I guess we've been criticized over the years a little bit about, maybe being a little groovy or hippy-dippy with bringing music into these conversations, but I really honestly feel like hell no. If you really want to see how change happens in America, listen to our music. And
Our specific music or just music in general?
just, we're the only ones that are actually affecting change through music. So I don't know if anybody. No, I mean, as Americans, right, our music, hip hop, the blues, folk music, rock music, we have been changing through music, for all of our history. And music is the place where our beautiful cultural realities come together and mix. It's where we challenge the status quo. So, yeah, we're not the ones. That's up to you to decide, but we wanted to begin with a little music just to kind of bring, like you said, the heart and the mind together in these conversations. Because if we're just doing this as an intellectual exercise, I think that's actually why we still have the gaps in public education. Because we've been up here a lot and maybe not engaging at the heart level enough. So music is a way to do that. And we're actually going to do this as a little bit of a collaboration. So we want to hear your voices to help us bring the music in. And the metaphor is one that I know Phil and I share. I'm sorry, are you okay with first names? Okay. That's the way we were introduced. We share a passion for rivers. And I think you expressed a little bit, maybe some of our friends and colleagues get a little tired of us talking about how cool the river metaphor is. But for me, man, it's like, there's no end to the metaphors of rivers. I'm a river runner. I was a river runner before I was an educator. I'm still, have been, and I'm still a guide on the Colorado River in Grand Canyon. Has anybody been down on that journey? Down that river, through that canyon? A few folks, yeah. This is the first year in 25 years I've not been down there. So I kind of miss it, but it's a beautiful place. It's your river that you all give to Arizona. Right?
Thank you.
Right? And we fight over this water, actually, right? We fight over this water to irrigate land. But this is the view from Nankoweap looking downstream. Nankoweap is an archaeological region where the Anasazi people were farming, 800 to 1,200 years ago. It's a classic view of Grand Canyon. It's one that you'll see. You saw Dad up there talking with a fake image of Grand Canyon behind him. And it's more than a metaphor for us, because actually a lot of the ideas and the experiences and the conversations for us came from actually doing river trips on the Colorado River with educators from around the country and using it as a way to remember why we came to this profession, to think more deeply about what it is we want for the next generation, to connect across difference, because our river trips with educators were incredibly diverse, much more diverse than most of the river trips on the Colorado River are still mostly white folks going down and having that experience. And so we were also expanding the notion of who does this experience. And so it's deep in our thinking about this work, not only as a metaphor, but as a reality. Rivers have a lot to teach us. I think I learned more from rivers than I did in my 19 or 20 years of schooling. I've learned to be patient. I've learned to tap into my own femininity. I think rivers have a lot to teach us about masculinity and femininity. I've been drugged along the bottom with my head banged against the cobble and my fingers filling up with sediment, and then you come out of that experience, and that first breath you have when you come up from a river is like the most beautiful breath you've ever had. It reminds you of the beauty that we're alive. And that beauty is kind of what we want to explore a little bit with this song. This is also Grand Canyon. Anybody know where this is? Yeah. You got it. Say it in the mic.
Lake Havasu?
Yeah. Pretty close. It's Havasu Creek. But you got it, right? Do you know what Havasu means? Does anybody know what Havasu means? The Havasu Pi people are the people of Havasu Canyon. Havasu Pi means people of the blue-green water, which makes sense, right? This is actually Havasu looking downstream, and you can see the greener water in the distance is the Colorado. So this is the confluence of Havasu Creek and the Colorado. Now I put this picture in here as a metaphor for what I would like my life to feel like. I would like my profession in education to feel like. I wish my classroom felt like this. Is anybody with me? Right? This time of year, we can maybe even expect that. We've been rejuvenated in summertime. Here's what I feel like my classroom feels like most of the time. Right? I feel that you're resonating with that, right? This is also the Colorado River, and it's a different kind of beauty, right? You know, I have 2 teenagers at home. My daughter's 14. She's going into high school this year. My son's going to be a senior in high school. And there's so much about my children that I love. They're beautiful young people. And as much as I would like to just enjoy our relationship and have it feel like this, they're teenagers. And it really feels more like that rapid, you know? It feels more like that. I've been married for 20 years. I like it.
Don't go there, Benji. Just leave it. We're good. In the classroom.
What I'm getting at is, and what Wade and I want to share is that this is more like our profession. We're living in a complex environment that is changing all the time, and this river is muddy. It's got everything in it. All that sediment from all that rain is in our river. I mean, this is democracy when everybody thinks the same. Everybody believes the same. Everybody has the same political viewpoint. This is real democracy, right? This is public education when everything functions perfectly and every kid comes into our buildings prepared to be a learner and be successful. But we know that this is more the reality of the river that we're running. So we want to explore this kind of beauty a little bit and share a song that really kind of dives into the idea that complexity, beauty, fear, all these things can live inside. The idea that beauty is not just something pretty to look at, but we need to celebrate beauty, dynamic, complex beauty, to fortify ourselves to do our job, because we have to remember that we're beautiful human beings, we live on a beautiful planet, and we actually, as front office people, as grounds people, bus drivers, teachers, principals, we all have the most beautiful profession on the planet. To be in public education is amazing, you know, but it's this kind of beauty. So we're going to explore that a little bit. I'll let Wade say that.
Yeah, I'd love to really tap into the idea, what I was hearing this morning, and also having conversation with students this morning about the value of relationships. And that we all know that relationships actually get deepened and strengthened when there's been some challenge, when we've gone through conflict. So in as much as, you know, I see that blue-green water as maybe the potential, I'm not sure if I really even want that. Because on some levels that might be just too superficial. And maybe the depth is kind of really going through tough times and seeing a beauty in struggle. And not to romanticize struggle, because we do need to eliminate ways in which people are being harmed and hurt. But we also want to just recognize that we're all human. And I think that's just the way we're always going to show up, perhaps forever. Now, we would like to offer this song in a conversation format to open it up. And the theme of this song is about beauty. The song was actually written by Benji, and it was a moment where he was out on a lake with his 2 children, and they were fishing. And he dropped the line in the water, and as the line dropped in, you could see the ripples kind of moving out from around it, and as they looked down on those ripples, Benji could see the reflection of he and his children, as well as the snow-capped peaks behind him. And in a moment of just profound beauty, there was also this moment that he's expressed to me about just being petrified and being overwhelmed at just the dimension of life. Maybe being so small in this profound place. And I added to this song. So the way we collaborate, either I might start a song, he builds on it, or he'll write a song and I'll do the same. But I was inspired by actually growing up in Arizona and not actually even visiting nor going down the Grand Canyon until I was in my 40s. So it took me 40 years being from Arizona to even get to the Grand Canyon. And it was something that I didn't even realize I was missing. It connected me just to the earth. It connected me to my ancestors from different parts of the world. It just reminded me of just time. And there's another piece of the song that also speaks to our theme. We have a lot of themes around water, and we also just want to acknowledge that there's so much movement around the world around protecting water. And I know we talked about fighting over water, but so much of that fighting is, I think, rooted in protection and knowing that water is going to be, continue to be one of our major social issues of our times. So with all that, I would like to ask maybe a few people who would be open to sharing some aspect of beauty that you've experienced that kind of roots you to your sense of purpose in this work. So it could be something that maybe happened, experience with the environment. It could be a relationship, sense of beauty. But I'm wondering if there's anybody here, and we could take the mic all the way back to the far corner, wherever it needs to go, but 2 or 3 people that would just be open to sharing some moment of kind of profound beauty that you would be open to sharing with our community today. And I know we have a big group here, but we're all just single individuals hearing one another, right? So I hope this can still feel intimate. Would anybody be open to just sharing your experience of beauty and how that's maybe filling your purpose of kind of stepping into a new year in this work? Would anybody be open to that? All right, thank you for kicking us off. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I know a lot of you. I think the beauty that I first experienced was the first moment after my children were born. Separately, 5 years apart, of course, but it was the first moment they looked up at me and smiled. And it was the connection we had right then and there. So, that's it.
How old are your kids?
One is going to be 32 next month, and she's getting married in November. And then I have my son who's going to be 37 in November as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. You got those babies. Yeah. All right, anybody else? How about just from this side over here? Anyone on this side of the audience that would be open to share a moment of beauty? Man, just get, you can, okay. I'm coming to you all next. All right. All right.
Hi.
Hi.
Bless up. The moment that I had that I think was beautiful was this summer after one of my friends died, and he went to the school with me, and we all got together as a class and we just shared memories with each other and we gave each other hugs. And I'm talking about the people that bullied each other and the people that said they didn't like each other. We got together just to say that we loved Taylor, and we were very, very bittersweetly happy with each other's. So yeah, that's mine.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And particularly, I think, bringing in the idea of bullying as one of those things that I think we've all had experiences with. I think we're all looking for ways in which we can take care of one another better. And it's never too late to bridge those relations. Anybody here open to sharing an experience of beauty? You'll do it? Oh, I love it. Okay. Can we pass the mic?
So I was in Egypt scuba diving in the Red Sea about 15 years ago. We did 3 dives per day. And the crew was Egyptian. And we'd stop in the middle of the day for afternoon prayers and do nothing. And I asked them, I said, can I pray with you? And they let me. So we did. And for the next 7 days. We became friends. And at the end of that trip, I was by myself. At the end of that trip, they called me their Muslim brother. And they said, "You look like me, and we look like each other." And then I gave them some shirts that were used, and they understood exactly the point. And that was a big, beautiful realization.
Yeah, thank you. So
Thank you.
I hope you can feel at least a little bit what's going on here, which is that, like what you brought up around tragedy tends to bring community together, right? It's a reality, and sometimes we lose that over time. So a lot of equity work is about how do we create this community at a heart and head level without having to have a tragedy, right? To come together and really hear each other's voices. I just learned something from you. I think I would like to learn how to pace my speaking more like you. Like, beautiful. I was hanging on every word. Like, did you learn that, or is that just natural? Pretty cool. Thank you for, I know that's kind of a crazy thing to kick off with. You don't know us that well, and we're like, tell us a profound experience you've had in this life. So thank you for helping us to make that connection. All right, I know we did a lot of leading, so y'all okay with this song? Okay, let's do it.
All right. This song is called Out on the Water. Seen a fire lit up straight to the sky that was ignited by a call and reply. Singing water is life, but in Lakota shouted, many were joining. I saw so many families all standing there with destinies closely shared. The elders said, be prepared. There's more to witness in the bear. Prophecies have revealed the time to protect and shield, but go deeper with a vision from our heart. Because here we are on the shell of Turtle Island. Every cell and every island, every life is a relative one. Here to be the momentum, to see the pendulum swing like the sun to the west. You know there's no rest for the weary, like this hummingbird to the left.
Yeah. Out on the water, with a line and a stone. Snow-covered bridges, hate on my head, I know I'm all alone. Yeah. Fishing for heaven, make a man shiver his bones. Hey, 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 hey.
Every time looking for peace of mind, I tried to cast a line in the pools I couldn't find. Leading trails to the source, I was staying the course of the seeker. But I could see so many lives in my hand, just trying to understand how this woman a man. But elder stones made of sand, reeds converged to blues, became so clear what to do, just sink deeper and deeper. Where I was, cause there I was on that high take, I'm running on that high take, I'm running on a boat under the moon and the sun, just floating the currents and rapids, mapping the sweet silver thread with my head, till my soul took hold of the rudder. We asked permission instead.
Out on the water, with a hook, a line, and a stone. Snow-covered bridges, hate over my head, I know I'm all alone. Fishing for heaven, make a man Thanks for letting us share a song with you. Wade and I are the co-architects, I guess, of the Youth Equity Stewardship Program, which we're really excited to share with with high school students from Eagle County. Actually, we're super excited. We have some here. We've already met some of the students, and that just made us that much more excited to be a part of your journey. And we're going to really hear from them here in a minute. And we want to set up a conversation. Again, this idea of beauty not as something pretty to look at, but something that fortifies ourselves and reminds ourselves of the beauty of our profession, the beauty of the families and the diversity that comes into our buildings, the children, the beauty of ourselves, the beauty of the earth that we live on, and the beauty of the future if we do our jobs right. Right? We fortify ourselves because we have to deal with the hard truths as well, which is, if we're going back to the data, I've worked a lot in Seattle public schools. Seattle public schools has put tens of millions of dollars into equity and diversity work over the last 2 decades. And guess what? It's worse today than it was 20 years ago. So we have some real serious questions that we have to wrestle with, right, in our profession. And how are we shifting our practice? How are we shifting the way we're thinking about this work so that it actually has results? Because, if we're looking at the disparities, this is what we're usually talking about, right? Sometimes people ask the question, why do you call this work deep equity? And it's usually kind of like deep, like, is it really that deep? Not deep as in, it's really, we're talking about, one of the things that we're looking at is that if we're just focusing on the data, if we're focusing on the gaps as the problem, we're not addressing the underlying problem that manifests as the gaps, right? So it's getting into a more human journey, working at the personal level, the personal reflection, looking at our biases, looking at history, translating that to the professional, translating the professional to the organizational, translating the organizational to hopefully produce societal results, right? But here's what we're looking at usually, and I know that this isn't a full list because it's like what we measure, but also the things that we don't measure. So much of this is about relationship and how it feels to be in school. But I don't know, is anybody familiar with the Annie E. Casey Foundation? Do you go there to get, it's an amazing, exhaustive look at what education looks like in America. It's really looking at the health of a child. And the Annie E. Casey Foundation doesn't just look at educational outcomes like test scores, graduation rates, AP enrollment, things like that, discipline referrals. They look at a more holistic picture of the health of educational health of a child. There's 12 points, right, Wade? 12 sort of indicators, including economic indicators, because we know now that poverty itself is a trauma that's experienced every day. So that factors into a student's ability to learn in school. Out of those 12 factors, each one is 100 points. And so a perfect score for a student would be 1,200. And this is what, I'm going to offer you up national data and then look at Colorado so that we can kind of get a picture of where we are when we're having these conversations. I've looked at your data too. The first thing I have to say is, we're working in schools all across the country. You're doing some amazing work here in Eagle County. I'm really excited to learn more. So, because one of the cool parts of our job is we can share best practices from one district to another. So again, out of 1,200, Asian Pacific Islander 783, 713 for white students. Latinos are 429. American Indian 413. African American 369. To me, the profound aspect of the KCE, the Annie B. Casey Foundation findings, is the distance between where that red line is. You know, for me, it's like it really creates a very real visual on what's going on in America. And again, these aren't just specific educational outcomes. This is the overall educational health of a child. And so this is looking across from high to low, from state to state, right? So you have the highest state for Asian and Pacific Islanders, as well as something going on in New Jersey for white folks. We're doing a really good job with those folks in New Jersey. And then the lowest, and then there's the national average. So the national average is what I just showed you. Just take a minute to look at this. Maybe talk to a partner. If there's any, what do you notice when you kind of look at this, these numbers on this screen? Is there anything that jumps out at you in your mind? You can just talk to somebody who's next to you. What do you see? What do you notice? Maybe something is disturbing you. Just take a moment to do that.
I grew up in New Jersey, and so I'm wondering, like, is there an economic thing in New Jersey that's happening? I don't, it's kind of like, I guess what's really, or at least
I'm just noticing that I got to sit down right here for a second. I hate to tell you, all you bleacher people up there, I see some people resting your bottom sides. Go for it, yeah, because I just realized these ones down here have hats on. It's like an equity issue, you know. I shouldn't even brought that up. Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's only the front row. There's one right here if anybody wants to. Yeah. I'm not going to go too far out, but anybody want to just share maybe something that you heard, something that you noticed from this image? Anything stand out? Yeah.
We were wondering why the Asian and Pacific Islanders were grouped together. That was something that stood out to us.
I have a lot of Pacific Islander friends that have a problem with that. They don't identify as Asian. So our US Census data organizes like this, but it by no means really represents who we are, right? For one, there's not enough on here. There's not enough of us on this list, but basically we tend to organize data in the same pattern that the US Census does, right? Yeah.
That the minority groups fall below the national average. For like their highest achieving is below the national average for the white group.
Yeah. The lowest is West Virginia for white. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so you notice that the average for whites is higher than the highest for people of color. And the lowest for whites is still higher than the average for African American and Latinos, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
Sorry. I think what's really important about the report and the rankings is like knowing the indicators. So birth rate is one of the indicators, and so I'm thinking if some groups are having the lowest birth rate, like how are we predicting from the day you're born all these other factors? And I know the healthcare and percent of mothers that die in childbirth is very disproportionate. So I just wonder if that one thing affects every other indicator.
Yeah, you kind of point to something that I think for us as educators is a hard truth. Like, how much of these indicators are things that we can do something about, and how many aren't?
Well, as educators, we can't necessarily, but if this entire room believes that that's not okay, and the healthcare system needs to change.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
for each of the groups, I noticed there's huge disparity between different states, so it can be done differently. So being identified as any one of these groups doesn't necessarily mean one outcome, that it can be good or bad depending on where you live or what kind of system you live in.
So the Sunshine Coast where I live had, in the low 41, 42% graduation rate for Native American students in British Columbia. In 10 years of doing really cultural empowerment and return to traditions, they're graduating, some of their schools are graduating 100% of their students. It's like, again, we can do this. The data actually shows that we can do it. Tucson, Arizona, where Wade's from, turned and flipped the script on achievement for Hispanic Chicano students. Yeah, it can be done. I'm going to just give you just a picture of Colorado so you can kind of see the negative or plus is just whether or not your state is below or above the national average. I think in general, Eagle County is pretty much elevated on all fronts from this. Am I correct in that? For the most part, yeah. I don't have them off the top of my head, but we'll pull them up. I think that having a list up here would be a really good idea. I think I'll do that next time. So you can actually see what your birth rate, income, level of income, two-parent household. It also has educational components, around like school, where you go to school. Can you think of some more that are on there? That's like 5.
Is it mother's education?
Yeah, level of education of the parents. But yeah, I think access to pre-K might be one of them. I can't remember. So this is your state. And we really want to just kind of open this up as a way to enter into a conversation, a short conversation for you, here at the beginning of the school year, around urgency. And I'm just going to, this is for me on a personal level. I grew up, I had no sense of urgency around this one. As a white kid, growing up in a mostly all-white town, so I'm a white, male, heterosexual, person that grew up in rural America. I don't know if that makes me more white or less white, but I'm a country boy, right? And even though I grew up in a family that was having conversations about equity and social justice, it wasn't really real for me because it wasn't my reality. Like everyone I went to school with, for the most part, looked like me. So there was no sense of urgency for me around this conversation we're having here this morning. I actually thought diversity and inclusion and all that stuff was just about being nicer to people. That was my mind frame growing up. But, and this is kind of an image that reminds me of the culture of my community. So I come from a logging community, Darrington. Has anybody ever been to Darrington, Washington? Nobody. Yep, that's where I come from. Exactly. The only thing that Darrington is famous for is they got a big old blue. You've been there. Did you go to the Bluegrass Festival or the rodeo?
You had to have been to either one of those.
Otherwise, there's no reason to go there. It's pretty, yeah. It's right in the heart of the Cascades. I grew up on the Stillaguamish River. It's a beautiful place, a place where family values are really important. Faith is important. It's the kind of place where when your deck falls down, there's 10 people that show up on Sunday to help you fix it. People bring food to each other's house, and there's a work ethic where I come from, and I feel proud of that. But it wasn't until I was in high school that I started to get a little bit of a shift in my consciousness, because that was the time when the fishing wars were happening in Washington State, and basically the tribes were trying to get back their treaty rights around fishing. And the commercial fishing industry felt like that was a threat because the tribes were going to be able to use nets and the commercial white fishermen couldn't. And that's when you started to see pickup trucks around in my town with a bumper sticker that said, "Save a fish, kill an Indian." And something burned a little hole in my brain that there were people in my community that were not living the same American experience as I was. Right? And that little hole is still burning. It's just getting bigger. That my worldview, my perspective, my way of thinking, my normal way of being, my sense of my normality, isn't everybody's experience. Because I grew up in a beautiful place, but there were people that were very much not heard from in my community. It's a tough place to be a black kid. There was one black kid in my graduating class. It was a very tough place to be a gay kid. And obviously pretty tough for our really high poverty with the Stillaguamish and Sauk tribal realities. Is tough where I come from. So in that little hole burning in my brain, an urgency started to grow around this work and these conversations.
All right, you've heard of Martin Luther King Jr.? Anyone heard of that name? Yeah, pretty familiar. What was his speech? I have a dream. And that's beautiful, and that's also super problematic, because he said a lot of other things that were really critical to moving forward. And this quote here, I'm wondering if someone else, would anybody be willing to conjure the spirit of Martin Luther King and speak this quote? Who would be willing to read this? Anybody here in the soft seats, in the soft plush areas? We get somebody to speak to this?
We have come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy.
And this idea of incrementalism or gradualism, this kind of slow drip, drop, approach where, yes, we can pat ourselves on the back when we show our numbers shifting, but as you're talking about low birth weight, we can't wait. It needs to be now. We don't have till Monday. We really absolutely, I think, need to kind of consider the fierce urgency of now generally, but I also think what we're hoping is this work is going to constantly remind us of anchoring ourselves in our own fierce urgencies of now.